Does USDT have exposure to Evergrande? Does USDT own assets in Evergrande? If it does, how big is it? If they have exposure, does that leave USDT as something that's vulnerable? Bitcoin, Ethereum may be volatile, but they may actually be safer because of them being relatively decentralized. Hey guys, so over the past few days, as you all know, we've seen the cryptocurrency markets drop, we've seen Bitcoin drop as well. And as what I said in the previous video, part of it also, part and parcel of it was mainly because of China stating that they're banning Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in their country. But if you look at the charts also prior to that, one of the biggest issues that people are also watching is the Evergrande situation in China. For those who don't know what's going on, Evergrande is one of the largest property developers in China, and they've grown massively. They've scaled very well. But one thing was very concerning before I go to the meat of the topic was as they started to scale, they entered businesses that were not connected to their main line, which was property development. They've diversified in different businesses that were away from their core business model. There's a large concern in the entire investing community that they might default on their debts. For those who are not financial people who are watching this, when I say they might default on their debts, they may not be able to pay off the money that they borrowed, which in all intents and purposes is not something that's very, very good. What makes this interesting and what makes this a bit something that's worth covering and talking about is this. Evergrande is so big, and what's so interesting about that is Evergrande released a large amount of commercial paper, and because there was a lot of commercial paper running around or moving around, to everyone, commercial paper is debt. A lot of other companies that lent money to Evergrande that owned those commercial paper started to treat that as cash. So please do remember this, that every time it's a corporate debt, it's not guaranteed. It's not like government bonds that for sure that government bond is something that the government will actually pay, that the full might of the government will shoulder that debt. When it's a commercial paper, there's the ability that if the company is having a very, very hard time, then you know what's gonna happen. They don't have the ability to pay that debt or that commercial paper. The thing that was happening was other companies, suppliers, contractors that did a lot of work with Evergrande, they started using that commercial paper as cash, using that as payment, paying that commercial paper to other people. And as they started to pay that commercial paper to other people, people who accepted it were actually thinking that since Evergrande is a big company, they have the ability to pay for this, they have the ability to pay, I'll accept this, similar to me holding and owning cash. The problem with that is this: if they default, it will be like a domino of cards that are starting to fall, because it's not just Evergrande anymore, and it's not just their creditors or their suppliers, it's also the ripple effect of other people who now own those commercial paper that was heavily spread. If you're just looking at it from that perspective, that seems like a China thing. That seems like something that, okay, it's just highly interconnected to what's happening in China. So why should I be scared? Why should this startle me? Why should this be a cause for me to be worried about my investments? So please do remember that right now, China is the second largest economy already in the world. There's so much manufacturing also that's happening there. But above and beyond that, what happens to China affects sentiment, not just in their country, but in different parts of the world. There's what you call contagion, that it may spread to different countries, continents that are very, very far from China as well. And that's what we saw a couple of days ago. It's not just that the cryptocurrency market dropped, it's also we saw the US stock market drop also. So that being said, I want to note this also to a lot of people. I've been talking about Bitcoin as a store of value. I've been talking about Bitcoin as digital gold, digital property. But if you look at it, it's more of a risk on type of asset meaning it's highly correlated to the US stock market. If the S&P 500 is up, Bitcoin also follows. Bitcoin is generally up. Even in the crash last year, March 2020, we saw the US markets drop, then we also saw Bitcoin drop. Then right after that, we saw as the S&P 500 start to push up, Nasdaq push up. In the same way, we also saw Bitcoin also start to push up. Now, on the date when we saw the Evergrande issue explode and become more mainstream, that's what we're also seeing. US markets drop, then you also saw Bitcoin drop as well. The main issue, I guess, that I want to also talk about and share is this. One way for Evergrande to somehow escape this is if the Chinese government bails them out. Similar to what happened to some banks and financial institutions in the US in 2008. Now, that's something that where there could be a lot of speculation on, because honestly, I don't know how this would possibly go or this would possibly turn out, because there's also a possibility that China would take a hardline stance that this should be a lesson for you to not be leveraged. This should be a lesson for you to not do what you're doing, that they could set a tone for people or companies or institutions that don't over leverage yourself, because we won't bail you out. If they want to set an example to other companies in China, they could possibly not bail them out. It may be relatively bad for other companies that are connected to it. The ripple effect of it will be massive. On the flip side, if they get bailed out, it will set a precedent also to other companies that, okay, if we do bad, the company might protect us. The company might bail us out. So one reason why countries bail out large companies if they are too big to fail, Evergrande employs a lot of people. So it's not just that they have debt, but if they close down, imagine the ripple effect on how it could possibly go with a lot of their suppliers, contractors, and the people working with them and for them. There's a looming property bubble in China that prices have gone up massively, and then you have a large amount of Chinese who are speculating on prices. Some of them are buying properties right now that will take years before it's actually completed. And a lot of them are buying it in reference of price action upward. A lot of the people who live in China are primarily into real estate, and that's why we have been seeing insane amounts of prices zoom insanely over the past few years. Second and third tier cities have prices that are competing to main cities like London already. That's how expensive property prices are in China. What we're talking about here for Evergrande is not just a Chinese real estate bubble, but what we're talking about here in China is, if this fails, it's not just the companies connected to it that may be in trouble. Please do remember that you have a lot of funds that are based in the US, hedge funds, mutual funds that are invested in this. I don't know the percentages of what they have in their portfolio, but if there are banks, funds that have a large allocation in these companies, they will be the ones that will be severely hit. Since we've been talking a lot about cryptocurrencies, this is something that I would also want you to consider. Over the past few months of me analyzing stablecoins, I've come to realize that, okay, USDC, BUSD is something which I favor more over USDT, primarily because of there's a lot of things that are not so clear for me into USDT. When you look at the latest disclosure of the assets that are held by USDT, bits and pieces of it, you would see that they have 30 billion of commercial paper. Interesting that we need to actually research, and I would like to actually find out also, is does USDT have exposure to Evergrande? Does USDT own assets in Evergrande? If it does, how big is it? So if a big chunk of it is in Evergrande, that's something that is a bit concerning, especially for crypto investors like us, that when we move from other altcoins into stablecoins, the default would either be USDC, BUSD, or USDT, and USDT is the largest. As you can see right here, USDT has a very, very large market cap, and what happens to it also will have implications in the crypto market as well. Over the past few years now, everyone's thinking about, okay, when I take profits, when I sell, I'll just transfer to USDT. So that the ringing concern right now is, if they have exposure, does that leave USDT as something that's vulnerable? So what I'll do also over the next few weeks is I'll try to analyze this and I'll try to do more research in a way that, does USDT have exposure into it? And how will this affect other markets as well? But truth be told, that whatever happens in China will affect the US stock market on a sentiment level. There will also be a ripple effect on how the businesses will be. There will be an effect on funds that are invested in it. And ultimately also what happens to the US stock market, it's highly correlated to the cryptocurrency markets. Negative news for Evergrande will be negative news for the US stock market, and it will be negative movement also for the cryptocurrency market as well. That being said, this is what I actually realized, that okay, it's not just about stable coins, but probably a safe store of value really is Bitcoin, is Ethereum, because at the end of it all, they're very decentralized. It protects you from movements like this because they don't need to have actual collateral. Bitcoin, Ethereum may be volatile, but they may actually be safer because of them being relatively decentralized. I'm not saying this also that, okay, there might be something bad that could possibly happen, because you have been seeing news reports also saying that this could be 2008 all over again. I don't know. I think one thing to watch out for will be how China will deal with this. Will they bail them out, or will they actually default? Will they file for bankruptcy? And then that's where we could possibly see how the cards would actually fall from there. These are things we can't control. We can't control how China will deal with it. We can't control the bankruptcy, how big USDT's exposure is to this. But what we can do is research. But above and beyond that, what we can do also is deploy proper risk management. Maybe good to have some exposure to USDC or BUSD so that not everything is in USDT. Or it might be better to either put it in other cryptos that you believe in, that you do know that even it's volatile, it could protect you better than USDT. Or in the same way, it might be also an option when things are not so good to bring it back to fiat as well. So those are some options, those are some things that you could possibly do, but nothing beats being informed, nothing beats having a plan in all of this. Because at the end of the day, since the cryptocurrency market also is so new, any negative news would bring prices down. Any negative news that would cause fear, uncertainty, and doubt would cause people to somehow take profits, or the new ones that are entering at a higher price to somehow sell also, given what's going on. But at the end of the day, what matters is, what's your timeline? What are you doing when it's down? Are you adding? Are you stacking? Are you buying? Or when it starts to reverse down, when it starts to go down, are you also taking profits? And ultimately, you can use technical analysis to be able to trade it, or you can follow whatever take profit mechanism that you have. I'll keep updating you on what could possibly happen in this, but I think what's important is not to act based on fear. What's important out of this is to base whatever decisions you will make out of data and to follow what your plan is. So that's it for now. This is Marvin Gurmo. I hope this video helps you trade well, trade strong, trade smart. See you all again soon, and God bless you all.